My family and I were overjoyed to move into our new suburban home with a forest in the back. It was a beautiful, spacious house with large windows that allowed us to bask in the natural beauty surrounding us. Like any dad, I want to keep my family safe. So before we moved in, I did my due diligence. I checked the crime statistics, made sure the locks were secure, and even talked to the neighbors. Everything seemed great. But right after we moved, odd occurrences began. At first, it was just little things. I'd put my keys down on the kitchen counter, and they'd disappear. My wife would ask me if I'd seen them, and I'd look around the whole house for them, only to find them in a strange place, such as inside an empty mason jar. Then there were the doors. They would open and close on their own, sometimes in the middle of the night. At first, we thought it was just the house settling in, but it started to happen more and more often and in bizarre patterns, as if someone was banging on or slamming them. However, soon, the occurrences became more noticeable and unsettling. One evening, while I was in the kitchen preparing dinner, I noticed that a black and smelly liquid in the sink began to run in reverse, splashing out of the drain. I shook my head, thinking it must be a fluke, but then the dishes in the drying rack started to rattle and move. I called out to my wife, but she was upstairs putting our kids to bed and wasn't able to see it on time. Later that night, my wife woke me up, startled by a loud, unidentifiable noise coming from the attic. As we listened, the noise intensified and began to sound like a low growl, causing our skin to crawl. We quickly decided to investigate and climbed up the narrow, creaky stairs to the attic. As we entered the dimly lit space, we were hit with a wave of freezing air and heard the sound of steps shuffling away from us. We searched the attic but found no one there. Over the next few days, the events escalated. My wife found huge claw scratch marks on our daughter's bedroom door. Even though our pets are small, we would hear faint evil whispers in the hallway at night and noticed that our pets were acting peculiarly, constantly staring off into space and snarling and hissing at seemingly nothing. The unsettling feeling in our home became too much to bear and we knew we needed to investigate further. My daughter started to complain about seeing shadows moving in her room at night, and my older son said he heard me moaning coming from the walls. We all started to feel like we were being watched. We tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just our imagination, or maybe there was a logical explanation for it. But as the unusual incidents continued, we began to get more and more paranoid. We installed security cameras, hoping to catch whatever it was that was causing all the weirdness. But when we watched the footage, we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. It was like whatever was causing the disturbances knew where the devices were installed. As the days went on, our fear grew. We stopped going out at night and locked ourselves in at all times. We were constantly on edge, waiting for the next weird circumstance to happen. Little did we know that the horrors we were experiencing were just the beginning of a much larger, much more terrifying truth. By then, I started to investigate. I talked to the neighbors, trying to see if they had felt anything similar, but they all seemed to be living perfectly normal lives. I went to the library and tried to find books about the history of the neighborhood. I asked the librarian if they had any information about supernatural phenomena in the area, but she looked at me like I was crazy. "We don't have anything like that here," she said, with a hint of annoyance. I searched online, but couldn't find anything either. I was determined to find out what was happening in our house. I talked to some of the older residents in the area, hoping they might have some information, but they either didn't know anything or didn't want to talk about it. After some days, I found someone willing to talk. An elderly woman confided me the last resident before us lived there about 20 years ago, but was executed in another state about 10 years ago for being a serial killer, known as the Dr. Scourge. She also said that when she was a child, people used to talk in hushed tones about a curious parish that believed in torture as a way of purification towards God, much as what God did to his own son. As I continued my investigation, I stumbled upon a disturbing revelation. Our house was really previously owned by the relative of a surgeon who was convicted for murdering 9 people in another city, but the police suspected there were more. We learned from some old newspapers that the surgeon used to lure some of his victims into his house, under the guise of providing medical treatment, only to torture, experiment and kill them. But there was no mention to our house whatsoever. We were shocked and horrified by this discovery, but it also provided us with a potential explanation for the eerie occurrences in our home. In a vicious circle of despair, we imagined that maybe the ghosts of the surgeon's undiscovered victims in our house could still be lingering around looking for justice, causing the supernatural phenomena we were experiencing. Determined to rid our home of this evil energy, I began to search for any clues or artifacts left behind by the surgeon. I combed through the attic and the basement, hoping to find something that could help me understand the surgeon's motives or methods. But it was in the garden bed, hidden beneath a bush, that I found a small box that would lead me down to an even darker path. Inside of it there were a series of photos and grisly images of the surgeon's victims, their bodies flayed and dismembered. As I flipped through the photos, my eyes widened in horror at the sight of the surgeon himself, dressed in strange ritual garments, surrounded by a group of even stranger cult fiends. We were shaken to our core by this discovery, and knew that we had to delve deeper into the surgeon's twisted past to understand what we were dealing with. The cryptic message left behind in the photos became our new focus, and we were determined to uncover the truth behind the surgeon's involvement with this bizarre and terrifying cult. As we pored over the grisly photos we found buried in the garden bed, our minds raced with questions. Who were these people in the cultist robes? And what kind of ritual were they performing with the surgeon? Our youngest boy started to see things in the shadows and claims to have conversations with an abnormal being. My wife and I started to experience vivid nightmares, and our once happy family life began to fray under the stress of the bizarre events. One night, as we were all sitting in the living room, the odd phenomena began once again. We could feel the temperature dropping, and the air grew thick with a sense of malevolence. Suddenly, our youngest boy let out a blood-curdling scream and pointed towards the corner of the room. We all turned to look and saw an amorphous, shadowy mass hovering there, pulsating and undulating as if alive. Its presence filled us with a deep sense of dread and foreboding, as if it was a manifestation of some unspeakable horror from beyond our world. Our boy's hair turned stark white as he fell into a state of complete catatonia. We rushed him to the hospital, but the doctors could find no physical cause for his condition. It was as if he had been driven insane by some otherworldly force. The incident left us shaken to our core, and we knew that we had to unravel the mystery of our house before it was too late. I searched the surrounding area for clues, but found nothing. However, our luck changed when I visited the old town hall archive. I discovered mention of a seemingly normal Christian congregation that had been active in the area many years ago, and according to the records, their old church was somewhere in the middle of the woods, in a forgotten tract. I walked for hours, searching for any sign of a temple, but the forest was dense and I quickly got lost. The trees seemed to close in around me, and the air grew thick with the scent of decay. Just as I was about to give up, I saw a glint of metal in the distance. I ran towards it, and found an old abandoned small church. The crumbling ruins were covered in vines and the air inside was thick with a moldy smell. It all seemed as a normal Catholic congregational hall. As I searched through the debris, I found a journal hidden under a pile of broken furniture. It was old and worn, but the writing was still legible. The journal belonged to one of the cult members. It described their beliefs, their rituals, and the sacrifices they made. I read through it in horror, realizing that my suspicions were true. When the night began, as I left the ruins and made my way back home, A sense of unease hung heavy in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was following me. My paranoia only intensified as I progressed. I heard strange rustling in the bushes, but my flashlight revealed nothing but darkness. Every time I turned around, there was nothing there, but I could hear bizarre noises, like twigs snapping under heavy footsteps and a kind of gnarling that no animal would do. It was as if something unnatural was tracking me, staying just out of sight. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, but the sound of pursuit intensified. It was like nothing I had ever experienced before, and the fear of the unknown gripped me tightly. Suddenly, a huge figure appeared in front of me, dressed in attire such as the ones from the cultists on the surgeon's photo. I froze, unsure of what to do. In panic, I ran. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay there. I stumbled through the woods, branches scratching at my skin, until I finally saw the lights of our house in the distance. As I burst through the door, I locked it behind me, panting and terrified. I heard a hard stomp at the door, something scratching it, snarling and growling. I could see through the window a neighbor watching the scene, terrified, and then closing the curtains when he saw me observing him. But then, the noises stopped and calm remained again. In the following morning, as I read the journal, I realized that there was something untypical about it. Certain words were underlined, and when I put them together, they formed a cryptic riddle. Amidst the chaos and the night, where darkness reigns and shadows fight, look for the key that lies in sight, to unlock the door that hides the light. At first, I was stumped by the charade, but after some careful thought and investigation, I noticed that the highlighted words were an anagram for a certain phrase. Seek the lintel right. This led me to look more closely at the basement's lintel, or the horizontal beam above the door frame. There, I found a small, hidden compartment that contained a key. This key unlocked a secret door that led to a sort of small dungeon. At the end of the tunnel, there was a room containing evidence of the cult's true horrors. There were markings on the walls, arcane symbols etched into the walls and floor, and an altar covered in dried blood. But what truly shocked me was the discovery of a skeleton. It was humanoid, though inhuman, with elongated limbs and sharp claws. No specialist could explain its origin. I realized then that the cult had been performing human sacrifices in our very own house. I felt violated and afraid, and knew that we had to leave that house, the neighborhood, and that town, immediately. Even now, I can't shake the feeling that I didn't find out everything about the cult, that there are still secrets hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Our little boy never recovered. We still have nightmares about the evil phenomena and wonder what other horrors might be hidden in those woods, that house and that town.